case, the mitzvah Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim is a mitzvah that is a zchus because it gives a merit and it fuels dozens and dozens of other mitzvahs. What I mean is that every time, every Shabbos, which we just heard that beautiful story, series of stories about Shmir Shabbos, every Shabbos is Zecher L'Tzias Mitzrayim. Every Yom Tov is Zecher L'Tzias Mitzrayim. Every time a Jewish man puts on tefillin, puts on beged, something where he wears tzitzis, all of that is Zecher L'Tzias Mitzrayim. But what does that even mean? It's just a phrase. We can do the mitzvah every day in Shachris, every day in Ma'ariv, when we say the Shema. We say, Ani Hashem Elokeichem asher hotzeisichem eretz Mitzrayim. Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. But what does that mean? What is the fullness, the full beauty of that mitzvah? That full beauty of this idea of all the dozens of mitzvahs that are Zecher L'Tzias Mitzrayim, all come from the beauty of this mitzvah, Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, on Seder night. So what's the difference? Every day I can say in the Shema, I can hear Hashem telling me by reading his words that he took us out of Mitzrayim to be our God. What's new, what's different about this mitzvah which takes place once a year on Seder night, or for those of us in Chutz La'aretz, that takes place 2 nights on both nights of the Sidarim? So the Rambam lists a number of details in Hilchos Chometz U'Matzah, Perek Shvi, in the 7th Perek. He discusses the many details of this mitzvah, some of which are, of course, known to anyone who has ever experienced a Seder. However, it's worth knowing exactly what it is in the Haggadah that is a fulfillment of this mitzvah that goes above and beyond what a Jew can say simply by saying twice a day, God took us out of Egypt. What more is there to this mitzvah? So the Rambam lists a number of things. Reb Chaim Brisker listed 3 things that differentiate the mitzvah of the Sidarim of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim from the twice daily mitzvah. The first one is implied in the way that it's described in the Torah, which is that it has to be done b'derech sheila u'tshuva. It's not enough to merely gather your family and friends on Seder night and say, listen, everybody, Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. Instead, it has to be done in a manner where people ask questions and you answer the questions. The way the Gemara phrases it very poignantly is by saying, if you have a son, then the son asks you. If you don't have a son, then let the daughter ask you. If there's no daughter, then have a wife ask a husband. And if a person is all alone, then he has to ask himself and answer the questions himself. It always has to be done b'derech sheila u'teshuva. And you will find that the Haggadah is filled with this. Not only the Manishtana. Manishtana, of course, is so well known, 4 kashas. But the whole Haggadah is filled with this. We mentioned Keneged Arba Banim Divrei Torah, where it's also done, where listening to the different questions that different types of Jews can ask. It's done later when we talk about Pesach Matzah Maror in the form of question and answer. It's even done in Hallel. Malecha Hayom Kisanus Sayarden Kisla Vlachor. The Hallel itself asks in a question and answer format. This has to be done on Seder night. The next thing, which is of course part of the Seder, is that it has to be done in the presence of the food. We know this from the Haggadah as well. We lift the matzah. Matzah zeh she'anu ochlum al shumah. Maror zu she'anu ochlum al shumah. Meaning the food has to be there. It's not enough to go to shul and read the Haggadah in shul and then come and eat the meal. The Haggadah, the telling of the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, has to be done in the context of the food there. And then the third thing, which takes up so much space in the Haggadah, is that it's not enough just to say Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. It has to be done in a manner of maschil bignus u'misayim b'shevach. You start off by speaking about the negative, and you conclude by describing the positive and by praising Hashem. This is done in 2 ways. It's actually a machlokas in the Gemara, but we handle it by doing both ways of both shitos, both opinions, which is according to one view. We start off by saying, Avadim hayinu lefar b'Mitzrayim, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. Vayotzienu, and Hashem took us out, biyad chazakav zra netuya. The other way of looking at this mitzvah from negative to positive is that we say, Mitchila of the avodah zara hayu avosenu. Originally, our ancestors worshipped idols. V'achshav karvanu makom lavodaso. Now Hashem has brought us to serve Him, and we conclude by praising Hashem. That is why the Hallel begins before the meal. it wouldn't be enough merely to say Hallel all after the meal. The Hallel has to be said before the meal because the Hallel is an intrinsic part of telling the story. As the Haggadah says, that after we tell the story, Chayv Adam liras his atzma ki ilu hu yatsa mitzrayim. Person is obligated to see himself as if he left Egypt. We then follow up and say, Lefichach, therefore, etc. Because we are supposed to experience it personally, that is why the praise and the gratitude has to express itself immediately. And then one last thing, which is that we can't just tell the story using our own words, and we shouldn't even tell the story using the words of Sefer Shmos directly. We should use it, we should fulfill the mitzvah by reading the passage called Arami Oved Avi, which is what a Jew said when he brought Bikurim to the Beis HaMikdash. Because leaving Mitzrayim was not a standalone act. Leaving Mitzrayim, or Hashem taking us out of Mitzrayim, was not a standalone act. It was in the context of his promise to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov to bring us to Eretz Yisrael. That is why we sing Dayenu, for example, meaning Yitzias Mitzrayim, Hashem taking us out of Mitzrayim, was the foundational act that led ultimately to the building of the Beis HaMikdash. Rabbi Friedman asked me if I would tie in something to Hasidus, so I will just say in my remaining few seconds that everyone should take a look. It is a short parak. It is a beautiful chapter, one which I try to start my day every morning after Birchos HaShachar, and that is to open up a Tanya to parak Mem Zayin, chapter 47 in Tanya. The Baal Tanya begins, V'hinei b'chol dar v'dar v'chol yom v'yom chayv adam liros atzmo ki'ilu hu yotza hayom mimitzrayim. Right? Those are the words similar to the words from the Haggadah, with the addition of b'chol yom v'yom, every day. And the Baal Tanya says, what does this mean? V'hi yitzias nefesh elokis mimaser haguf. This means when a person's godly soul is able to break away from being trapped in the body, mishcha dechivya, which is like snakeskin. Likolal biyuchud or ein sof baruch hu alidei esek haTorah v'hamitzvos, which a Jew can do by doing all mitzvos in general, b'chlal, b'prat b'kabolas malchus shamayim b'kriyas shema, specifically through the Shema. And in the Shema, Sheba mekabel u'mamshich alav yichudu yisbarach b'feirush v'omra Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. So every time a Jew says Kriya Shema, not just the last line of the Shema, but even the first line of the Shema, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. This is a Zer Anpin. It's like a miniature version that brings in all of the Kedusha of this very special mitzvah of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. With that, I want to wish you a good Vach, Hatzlacha Dekavach, full of success and full of joy as we, of course, in these last few weeks get ready for Pesach. Yashikayach.